If hello there, you bodacious boosters, you. I hope everybody's safe and well. Right on cue. I. Uh, let me get this over here. There we go. There we are. There we are. That's better. That's a little better. One concurrent viewer. Two concurrent viewers. Hi, Sticky Marks. First in chat. There you go. Number one in chat. Hi, Morgana. Capture top moments, create a highlight video. Yeah, could you not interrupt me while I'm streaming, please, Mr. YouTube? Soon, very soon. Hi, Edward. They're getting my account set up. I should be onboarded this week, perhaps. And then I'll start doing a lot of practice live streams on the new platform, get everybody comfortable, get me comfortable figuring out the chat window, how that's going to work. Today's episode is very much a rough draft, but I thought you'd like to see. It's a whole bunch of new information to dump on people in 1 hour. So I'll give you it's more than a sneak peek. I mean, it's not quite finished episode. In fact, I'm going to continue working on it. Whilst you guys chat amongst yourselves, let's see. Yeah, so what I need to do, there's one slide in particular I want to get ready. It's going to take a minute. That will take a minute now. Let me go here. My files. Recent? There we go. Should be the very first slide of this presentation. There is copy. Now where do I put this? That worked, that's good. I can close this and restart that. Like that. I can fix this. I can make 2 copies of this. Let's see. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. I can't I cannot believe just how much content I've really got already. This will take years. I will never run out of material. Oh, yeah. Let's see. That's the one I'm looking for. This one. This one. Yeah, that's a good one. That's for a later time. Yeah, you don't remember that either. And that's for later. So there's this one. And then there's this. It's starting to come together. Then there's this whole big section. Then there's this whole big section. That's for later. And this will just have to be out of order, that's all. Oh, I know. You guys will probably know. Hi, Baby Bull. Hi, Creepy Crawl. Hi, Dave. Or at least I know I need to look this up again. When did Armienti kind of wrap up his Son of Sam? When did Armienti wrap up his Son of Sam probe? It might matter more than you think. Then again, it might not. New window. Hi, Fire Pixie. Hi, Jack. Wrapped up the interviews by the fall of '79. That's what, and then give it a couple months to kind of just fizzle out, right? Hi, Brandy. No trigger warnings today, Brandy, unless you have relatives in the mafia. Is your 2022 just flying by? Soon I shall be in control of all things. I'm also getting more. I need a new one anyway. These really heavy black velvet theatrical curtains. I'm buying one directly from the manufacturer. They're pretty cheap, and I have all the other stuff. I can put it. Could almost double it. I could double it over. No, and I'll have more soundproofing. Like, I don't think you can hear the computer today, but there's going to be even more soundproofing between. I moved the computer kind of outside the desk area, so you couldn't really hear the computer, but I'm going to get even more soundproofing. So like the neighbor's air conditioning and stuff like that. It's just those, and then it's for I do photo and video still, so I need one of those anyway. I've got white backdrops, I've got green backdrops. I need a new black velvet curtain. Not too many Melungeons in the mafia. You might be surprised. They're not an equal opportunity employer. 12 viewers, that's excellent. Soon, all this workaround crap will be over. I'm just glad I did find out before I wrote, who a check for a whole year of service. But the new platform will not only match that price, I get a lot more for my money, and then a lot more for my money. Like, I won't have to pay for an app. Did you guys see We'll wait a couple more minutes. Did you guys see, and then I'll start. Did you guys see this? Like, this is not an app. This is, let me get this up here so I can see what I'm doing. Right, it's not an app. This is it's just a web browser version, but look. Like, how much simpler can it get? It'll be probably dark mode unless people complain. I can always reset it, but see, first you select whichever upcoming live streams, because I want to do more than one show. And then, you can click on a live stream. Now, it's not working yet, but then you can add it to your calendar app. So you don't have to, you'll get those alerts or whatever. And I'll be on a somewhat more regular schedule, I hope. I'm to really try really hard. And then there will be like one trailer for new subscribers or whatever. And then in between here, I can put or it can be like the catalog of the previous episodes. So like, upcoming live stream would be here at the top, and I can move this stuff around based a lot on you guys' feedback, and then think you can watch the archived episodes. And then when you go to the full-blown desktop site, that's even richer, and I'll have multiple pages. I'll have a store page, and I'll have a page where you can sign up for my classes, like creative writing classes, cold case investigation classes, handwriting comparison and analysis classes. I'm putting those on Zoom, but then there'll be links to this site. This really will be the one-stop shopping I have so sorely needed for a long time. This is really going to be it. So it's Sunday, so I don't know if Laz will be here. It's the witch's Sabbath or whatever. He's not a witch. He is an occultist, but he has studied. He's like the channel, the RR channel of the occult. Like, he knows stuff that he doesn't necessarily believe in, doesn't necessarily knock it, but he knows it. Like, he's got a very objective knowledge. He can be like a regular call-in. There will be call-in, or most people just want to chat, but call-in will be available, and then I can start a second show, which is down the road. Well, the thing is, Fire Pixie, it won't be any more tech talk. This is be this simple. It's just going to be this simple, especially on mobile. Now, I haven't tried their actual chat yet, and they're rolling out new features for their chat. So, but they were the ones who were really set up for what I do. Or like a lot of people, like my neighbor, like you can probably hear him thumping now. Like he's a personal trainer, and he does some shows from home. He does some from his gym. He does some shows from home. It's kind of like this. So today the intertubes, tomorrow the world. It's more about liberation than domination. I'm too lazy to dominate. People don't understand how lazy Hitler was, or JFK, how little work they actually did during a day. Okay, I'm going to play the theme and we'll start talking. Oh, there's another person. This is a pretty rough draft kind of episode, but I wanted you to see it and get a little feedback. And I know Carl can get links to these episodes. So, feel free to chat. It's okay. I'm not going to come break your thumbs if you got around the workaround and you're watching this episode for free. It's okay. I'm not going to track you down and break your thumbs. But the generous contributions from the Bodacious Boosters help pay for all of this. You will get a much better experience, a much richer experience. And I think it would be much easier for me. I go through a lot of rigmarole just getting the stream set up and crap, but it's been good practice. And you guys have stuck with me and showed me that there's an interest in the show. I don't need 1 million fans. I don't want 1 million fans. 1,000 fans would be too many, probably. I'll settle for 2,000. 100's not a bad number. And then they're upgrading it. The new chat will be chat, like you guys chat among yourselves. You don't always want me to butt in, but then you'll be able to DM each other. There will be direct messaging on the community, the actual boards where you can post not only links, you'll be able to post pictures and documents and things. There will be other archives of material that you'll get access to. Everything I've dreamed of for the last couple of years, but yeah, it's just going to be awesome. And on mobile, it's going to be like that. And then it's kind of like YouTube Premium, but when you're a subscriber, you'll be able to listen, with your phone closed or whatever. It plays in the background. The show will play in the background. So, but live streaming and chatting are what people are really paying for. And this was the only platform. I got to go behind a paywall for various legal reasons. And as long as it breaks even, I have no problem with that. If it makes money, I have no problem with that either. I don't need to make a lot of money this year, though. So it will be a couple of weeks. I wanted you to get a new episode today, but it might be about 2 weeks before I really do another one of these. I want to get this, no more half-assing. I want to get it set up and right and me familiar with it. And then we'll do some test live streams probably every night for a week. And then on that Saturday we'll do, and I might redo the previous couple of episodes because I'm trying to figure out how this stuff fits together in a way I can show you in like about a 1 hour episode I think is good. And then some chat. So, okay, let me get right to it. I'm not even going to bother playing the theme today. Unless, well, you know what? People love the theme. Let's just play the theme. I love the theme. And there's nothing there. Let's see. There it is. There it is. Start this live show. But you're going to get, this is, let me oversell this a little bit. I've been telling you people for a long time that we've cracked this whole thing. This huge, multi-century merry-go-round of crooked bankers and crooked lawyers and international drug dealers. But thanks to the response to the Stones Unturned podcast, there's even more evidence. And let me show you what I'm talking about. So let me play the theme. Raise this up a hair. There we go. I'm hoping in the future I won't need to dick around for 15, 20 minutes. I can start the episodes quicker and then chat at the end, but we'll see. So here we go. Let me push play. Push play.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society.
You're in violation of secure communication procedures, Commodore.
As a shareholder and director, I'm always proud of Walmart.
There is no America. There is no democracy.
Fifth objective, a new world order.
There are no nations. There are no peoples. There are no Russians. There are no Arabs. There are no third worlds. There is no West.
What do you call it when the assassins accuse the assassin?
A new world order.
Thank you for plugging in to the Stones Unturned podcast.
The end of the world, as you know it.
I'm your host, Professor Thomas Henry Horan.
He reads everything.
Aha, there we go. So, 5 golden rules, homicide cold case investigation. Professor Dad. Rule number 1, the more you know about the victims, the more you know about the perpetrators. Corollary, subsection B2, there is no such thing as a random murder. And in particular, a series of murders, like a serial killer, those turn out not to be all that random. And if police had the time and the resources to do more thorough investigations, right away it's like, oh, must have been a random killing. Because you ask any survivors, you ask the family members, can you think of anybody who might have wanted to kill your daughter? Nope, can't think of anybody. Okay, I guess it was a random murder then. And we'll just move on to the next case. This kind of is what happens. And we'll, I'll go back over this again. But these particular victims and survivors pretty much all lied to the cops. They're young, up to wild things, but that's just an excuse. When you lie when the victims and their families and the survivors and witnesses lie to the police, what the hell are the police supposed to do? There's no, on TV, it's always some magic thing that cracks the case, but that's not really true. Watch the old black and white dragnets. Now, the color dragnets are more socially conscious. They're woke. Have you seen the woke? Watch the pre-woke episodes of Dragnet. That's how it's done. That is how it's done in most cases. But if that doesn't work, the cops need a lot of help that they don't usually get. So there are no random victims, and there are no random victims in this case. Now, once again, right now, Lamino Damazzi, maybe Placido Lupo, maybe those shootings might not be related or might not be directly related, but you're going to see the concrete connections between many of these victims and Berkowitz and other suspects and Carl, Carl's a victim. Is he an innocent victim? That's a good question. And how much does Carl really know about his own shooting? That's another good question. The victims might not have known. I mean, Carl might not know what the reason was he got shot. But it doesn't mean that his family background doesn't have anything to do with it. Hi, Adam. So, let's just get right to it. Remember this. Some of us may be too young to remember. Some of us may be too old to remember. Remember this.
To get substance, you have to turn to the second page.
I don't have a second page, Counsel.
This is Oliver North, Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, National Security Council. Vietnam veteran, decorated Vietnam veteran.
161.
I do. I have a one-page. Top part is black. No second page.
If you're hampered in answering my question because of the absence of the document, say so and we'll provide it later.
He wasn't. He came across, unlike the bureaucrats and politicians who were hauled in front of this committee, Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North came across as very frank. He didn't really do any backpedaling. He didn't do a lot of dancing around. He seemed to have an excellent memory. And he said he was only willing to testify because he got sick and tired of being thrown under the bus. All the Secord and McFarlane, and these people were just basically blaming him, saying he was a loose cannon. And he said, well, that's enough of that shit. But you have to remember, most of his life, Army officers are trained to lie all the time. You don't want the enemy to know what you're doing. You want to be in the habit of spreading disinformation. And the higher ranked you go, the more they lie. Then he worked, but then for a long time, he was in command, I think. Hi, Pat Thomas. I think he was in command of the Marine Corps training army, right? There's a whole big chunk of the Army Air Force is devoted to training, like they have training battalions and replacement. He did that for several years, and then after the Nugan Bank failed in 1980, he is suddenly, you'll see about that. So these are hearings about the United States government, by acts of Congress, were committed to supporting various anti-communist insurgencies around the world, and especially in the Western Hemisphere. And then for political reasons, Congress cuts off some funding to the Contras. And so you have this problem where you have the administration by law is supposed to be supporting the Contras in Nicaragua and a lot of other places. This is specifically the Contras in Nicaragua. But Congress has cut off the money. So they could hide behind this excuse, well, we're still trying to do our legal duty, but we got to come up with other ways of financing. This also has to do with the October surprise, the secret back channel deal, not with the Iranians, but with some Iranians who had survived the revolution, were still in place, mainly running the military because the new Islamic government needed those people. They still needed some competent people. Iran wasn't like a lot of these Islamic republics where they just shoot everybody who knows what they're doing. They kept a lot of those people. So your strategy is to try to maintain contacts with those people and try to do what you can to help boost their prestige in the country so that they might be able to launch a counter-revolution, so on and so forth. Now, like in Nazi Germany, the Night of the Long Knives, they just shoot everybody. The Iranians didn't do as much of that, so you have people you could deal with, and the Iranian government under the Shah had purchased and paid for a whole kit and caboodle of modern weapons from the United States. Then the revolution happens, the United States government seizes assets and things. So to help this faction in Iran rebuild some of their prestige and power within the Iranian government itself. They work out a secret deal. The Iranians will pay for the weapons again, and then they will be delivered. This helps. Boy, does this help American weapons manufacturers like Lockheed. Oh boy, does that help them? Because the Saudis are buying a bunch of stuff from the United States. Remember, they bought those AWACS planes and a bunch of other. Remember Osama bin Laden's major complaint? You spent all of our oil money on weapons from the United States, and then now you still can't stop Saddam Hussein yourself? What's going on here? So what? So this was, the claim was this was illegal and perhaps unconstitutional. Now, under international law, it was iffy. But it's Air Force General Richard Secord is director of the CIA, and he's kind of a cuckoo in the CIA nest in some ways. In some ways, he's not, and you shall see. But he's one of these red-blooded Cold Warriors who will do anything to fight communism anywhere. And he's much older than you would think, and he's much taller than you would think. He's not one of these little shriveled up gray-haired old men. He's like 7 feet tall. He towered over Ronald Reagan. I mean, Richard Secord was a giant. I'm thinking of Richard Secord, right? No, not Richard Secord. Not Richard Secord. I'm talking about William Casey, director of the CIA. See, I should be looking at my slides. So these are the hearings, and this is about 6 hours of testimony by this Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North. And this, you sit around, there's a lot of this. They didn't give him all the pages, but that's okay. His lawyer he never really declined to answer a question. He sounded very frank and very forthcoming and very believable, which is interesting. Okay, here comes an interesting question.
Then Secord and Hakim commenced the arms purchases for the Contras.
Yes, sir. I think we got off a little bit, but after I conferred with Director Casey, I then, with his advice, recommended to Mr. Calero the establishment of an offshore bank account. And he then gave me that account number. I gave that account number to Mr. McFarland, and shortly thereafter, money started to flow.
So what happened was, to get alternative funding, William Casey, and we're going to see where he got the idea, they take this gung-ho, squeaky clean Vietnam War hero who runs the U.S. Marine Corps' own training program for Marines, and they assign him to the National Security Council. That's Richard Secord. That's George McFarland. We're not going to get totally into this today, but you need to know some of this stuff. So in 1983, they set up a new offshore bank. And this Mr. Hakim, he's an Israeli arms dealer. So you have Israelis, on TV, the Israelis and the Saudis and the Iranians all hate each other, but they actually need each other. The Saudis need Israel and Iran as enemies instead of America. And Iran needs Israel and Saudi Arabia as enemies. Remember, the Shia and the Shia and the Sunni Muslims, they don't get along. They're like Republicans and Democrats. They're much worse than Catholics and Protestants, okay? Much, much, much worse. Now, 400 years ago, Catholics and Protestants, right, it's kind of like that, kind of like the wars of religion. So you have Iranian arms dealers selling weapons to Israel, and you got Israel selling weapons to the Iranians. This is all on the hush-hush. So Oliver North is just kind of this gung-ho guy they can get to do quasi-legal things. He didn't think there was anything wrong with it. He saw, first of all, he said, my God, we've got to stop commies. Two, I didn't see this as totally illegal. Congress cut off the funding, but that's not really this. We're still legally committed to helping the Contras and morally committed to helping the Contras. And so this is what he's talking about. And see, and now he kind of goes back into a flashback to explain what had happened.
Then Secord and Hakim.
See, this is a rough. There's problems with these.
Then
oh.
Three criteria, actually, and that I communicated with General Secord on, was that these had to be standalone, offshore, commercial ventures.
Like Air America, Civil Air Transport, going back to 1937. This is an actual, see, if you are an employee of the State Department, if you are an actual officer in the State Department, like in the Central Intelligence Agency, and you get caught breaking international law, that's an act of war. You need proxies, you need mercenaries, you need front companies, like Civil Air Transport, which was then purchased by the CIA and called Air America, and then it kind of got divested again. It's just risking World War III when you own these things directly. So he talks about Casey really teaching him everything, and we're going to talk about Casey in just a second. Number one, they had to be standalone, offshore, actual businesses that did business, and then they just happened to do some work for the CIA. That was criterion one.
That they ought to be ultimately revenue producers, that they would generate their own revenue and be self-sustaining.
Right, that's standard operating procedure.
That they ought...
I don't know what's going on there.
And that those engaged in these commercial ventures were certainly deserving of fair, just, reasonable compensation.
All sounds very reasonable. Where'd they get the idea? Major General Richard Secord, Deputy Assistant, it's a complicated title, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense. He's not answerable directly to Congress, and he's not appointed by Congress. He's not the Deputy Secretary of Defense. He's not the Undersecretary of Defense. He's the Deputy Assistant Secretary. An Assistant Secretary, this gets to be a little bit important. There's a president, a CEO of a company, who runs a cabinet of vice presidents. The president and vice presidents are all appointed by the board of directors. They actually answer to the board of directors. The board of directors is like the owner of the team. The CEO is like the quarterback, calls the plays, makes sure everybody's knows the audibles. But the junior vice presidents are not hired and fired by the quarterback. They're hired and fired by the board of directors. Okay, there's really no coach or general manager. It's the board of directors who hire and fire executives. An assistant vice president is hired by the vice president. So you have secretaries of state for health, for defense. They are nominated by the president, but they're approved by Congress, and they answer directly to the Congress. In some ways, that's more like a parliamentary cabinet government, like they have in Britain, like they have in France. The United States government is more. There's a hilarious thing in the series Yes Minister, where Prime Minister, he's now Prime Minister, Jim Hacker, is accused of running an American presidential style government where he's like almost a dictator. Okay. But the assistant deputy, they're not necessarily, they're hired and fired by the secretary. From 81 to 83, more relevant to his involvement in the Iran-Contra affairs, he co-founded Stanford Technology Trading Group, one of these front companies, with Albert Hakim in 1985. Known internally as the Enterprise, not like the Enterprise ship. Like you hear about solutions for businesses, the enterprise. This was known as the enterprise.
The director was interested in the ability to go to an existing, as he put it, off-the-shelf, self-sustaining, stand-alone entity that could perform certain activities on behalf of the United States.
See, that should have been the first slide. Sorry, in that sequence. Sorry, it's still a rough draft. Looking for standalone, off-the-shelf. I think Rumsfeld talked about this. This is what Blackwater is sort of for, but they're a paramilitary force. But all these other contractors, there are some very specific ones, like Air America, like there are others. They're Wackenhut Security, the Blackwater before Blackwater. These off-the-shelf, standalone, self-sustaining, profit. Hi, Laz. So this word for this whole operation, alternative funding, alternative ways of buying and selling weapons and doing whatever that needs human trafficking that need to be done outside of government control, some people are a little skeptical over. And give you some idea here. March 1987, when historians write the final analysis of Iran-Contra, perhaps they should start with Richard Secord's 1972 master's thesis. He went to not the Army War College. He got an MBA. We'll get to his resume. I can't find a copy of this actual. Was it Army War College? He served in Vietnam. He was Air Force. He flew a ground attack aircraft, lots of secret missions, flying out of Bangkok, Thailand, and that will be important. 185 sorties over Vietnam, which was armed to the teeth with the latest Russian anti-aircraft. Secord is a cold-blooded killer. And God bless him, we need more in our Air Force. Committed commie hater, covert stuff pretty early on. Then he's rotated stateside. The Army sends him, sometimes they send him to Harvard to study, get their MBAs. I think he went to the Army War College. I know he went to George Washington University. Maybe this was his master's thesis at George Washington University. Remember where our friend Alec Baldwin went to school. Also called Spy School USA. So his master's thesis just says he flew Warthogs, right? I don't think they're A-10s, whatever they were called. He flew ground attack aircraft in Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia. Kind of like your old Helldiver or whatever, your Stukas, your ground attack aircraft, anti. Secord wrote, this is his introduction. The Pentagon, Unconventional Warfare, Covert Operations as an Instrument of U.S. Foreign Policy. His thesis director, the CIA advisor to the head of the U.S. Naval War College. The CIA should be given authority to run all such operations, Secord wrote at the start of the 50s. They had gone way beyond their rescript in the 50s. And had successfully overturned a couple banana republics. So they got all flush with success. They thought they could do the same thing in Cuba. They could get rid of Castro. This is what the Bay of Pigs was all about. But then Congress, after the Bay of Pigs fiasco, Congress limited their ability to do those kinds of things. But Richard Secord is saying the government needs the ability to do these things without supervision from Congress. So he says, the Pentagon itself should be removed from the chain of command, and parochial outcries from competing government groups should be ignored. Bureaucratic obstacles should be dismissed out of hand. He wrote, so should opposition from the press, Congress, academia, and others. A high-level group, probably the National Security Council, should develop and implement the required programs. This implies that Secord got this idea on his own. I'm pretty sure he got it from Bill Casey, and I'll show you how I know that in just a minute. Oh, Laz is onto something that goes beyond. Yeah, there's a lot. Wait till we get Wait, someday when you know a thing or two, we'll put a toe into the JFK assassination. Next slide, please, Professor. So once again,
in the enterprise that Secord, I believe, calls it an enterprise.
Yes, he did. And the funny thing is that famous bank that went bust in 1980, it was known as the Enterprise. And according to this article, remember Frank Turple? We'll talk about Frank Turple. Speaking of waking up at JFK dogs, anybody remember Frank Turple? I've got a couple clips here, little clippings. A federal court affidavit, Australian federal court, the Australians interviewed this. The Christic Institute Chief Counsel Daniel Sheehan suggests that the Nugan Bank acted as the middleman in a massive money laundering operation which made the profits of the China white heroin trade available for secret wars all over the world, such as the Contra activities in Central America. No, technically, Contra came after. Remember, weapons for Contras was paid for by cocaine, not morphine. Cocaine. Same difference, same principle. The Nugan Bank did funnel a lot of money. It was started by retired CIA generals and people like this who were still working as contractors for the government. Okay, the Australian charges against Shackley, Kleins, and Secord are supported by another former Wilson associate. He's talking about, we'll get to him in a minute. Frank Turple. In a 1983 interview, Turple discussed the significance of the Enterprise, which has operated out of Miami since 1960. Let me see if I can get my laser pointer working. The Enterprise, which has operated out of Miami since 1960. The significance of Miami is the drug syndicate. That's the base. All the people I hired. Okay? Well, I'm skimming the surface. I'm skimming the surface. But it was known as the Enterprise when it was the Nugan Bank handling the money. But remember, they collapsed in 80. So by 81, 82, you need track 2. Yeah, I never really know until I try to present an episode how much editing it needs. So,
when the Nugan Bank of Sydney, Australia collapsed in 1980, it appeared at first glance to be just another bank failure. But after Australian authorities began taking a closer look, they discovered a tangled web of intrigue with all the elements of a best-selling spy novel. A mysterious death, the body later dug up from its grave, illegal currency transactions, big-time drug operations, and the Central Intelligence Agency.
Okay, why do I keep making such a big deal out of that? So that's a 6 stash. Let me put this on. You want to see a 6 stash? There. This is Lieutenant Oliver North, in country, Vietnam, wounded, at least 2 Purple Hearts, plenty of decorations, and well thought of by his men, apparently. And then this is his new ID. He's still in the Marine Corps. He's promoted to Lieutenant Colonel eventually. He rises to Lieutenant Colonel. That's pretty high in the Marine Corps, especially in those days. They didn't have generals in the Marine Corps, right? Colonel, full bird colonel was as high as you could go in the Marine Corps, right? Maybe by Vietnam they had generals in the Marine Corps, but, or maybe they had like 1 general or something. But moving right along, this is him, National Security Council. And while he's on the ground in Vietnam, General Secord is flying top secret missions in support of Vang Pao and all these secret operations the United States is conducting illegally, which could start World War III because these are violations of international law. And if you get caught, that's much more serious. Yeah, Frank Turple was, he said it was been known as the Enterprise since at least as far back as 1960 when he got involved. It was called the Enterprise. You know, the business, the Enterprise. What did the Mafia really call themselves? La Cosa Nostra? This business of ours, this thing of ours? The Enterprise, the business. Are you in the business? Whatever business, are you in the business? Manny's in the business. Drew's in the business. We're all in the podcasting business. Okay, this gives you an idea of what's going on. There's somebody else who's serving in country. While Secord eventually is based in Bangkok, Thailand. He flies fighter aircraft, ground support fighter aircraft, and who is a mechanic known to us who's working on ground support and fighter aircraft at the U.S. Air Force Base in Bangkok, Thailand, for a pumpkin sticker. Who else was serving in the late 60s in Bangkok, Thailand at that Air Force Base? When Secord was this hotshot, cold-blooded. You know, I could maybe do it once. What blows my mind, guys I talked to, or older guys I knew, like World War II, like you see these horrific nightmare battles in the Pacific, but they'd have to do it more than once. You'd survive one battle, and after a few months rest, you had to go on another battle. And Sledgehammer, like Private Sledge, he's talked about it. And my uncle talked about it. Not so much his outfit, you could hear him when they, like especially Marines that have been used over and over again. They know that they were supposed to go on another invasion next, and you just hear it all night long, bang, and then you'd hear another bang over here, another suicide. They couldn't face doing it again. Secord flew, I know, over at least 200 to 300 known combat sorties against some top-of-the-line Russian anti-aircraft defenses and MiG fighters. So that's nerves of steel. And how could you tell a guy like that about the rules? And he's got friends who get shot down and they die, or they're tortured in POW camps, and some of them aren't rescued because they're on top secret missions and the government can't admit that they're POWs. It would be hard to tell this guy, well, we're just going to have to let the commies win because there's this rule that says. It would be tough to tell a guy like that. Right? We're going to talk about Timothy McVeigh someday. And they're, you know, what they think they're up to. Did anybody remember? John Carr was a Tech Sergeant John Charles Carr, United States Air Force, mechanic, Bangkok, Thailand, the exact same time Secord was there. Then they bring Secord home. He's training. He's an instructor, flight school for a couple years. Then they send him to George Washington University, and then he gets promoted, and then he becomes he attached to the Security Council. Well, he did a lot of covert stuff. Secord was covert. For example, this Wilson that they're talking about, that's this guy. Okay, the guy on the left, there are only a couple of photographs I've ever been able to find of Bernie Houghton. Bernie Houghton was Secord was, there was military assistance and advisory group. There was one for Vietnam. There was one for Iran before the revolution. And Secord was not only the guy, U.S. MAG Iran, but he, like, remember Adolf Galland, the Luftwaffe fighter commander, pilot, ace pilot, commanded the Argentinian Air Force and got it off the ground before he retired. Secord did the same thing for Iran, modernizing the Imperial Iran under the Shahs, modernizing their Air Force using American equipment. That was Secord. And he trained their trainers, he trained their pilots. That was Secord. This is him in 75 to 78. Bernie Houghton, one of the directors of Nugan Bank, put Nugan Bank next to Edwin P. Wilson. You I don't care who you think was an evil bad guy in the CIA, Edwin Wilson, working for the CIA, arms dealer CIA, who sold Navy ships, converted freighters and things, to the Iranian Navy. And this is part of that process of turning old World War II Liberty ships into secret spy ships, like the Thetis and the, was it Lido and Thetis? The Lido and the Thetis maybe were two CIA spy ships, look like fishing boats, I think, or freighters in the Caribbean. This is important. We will come back to this. That has something to do with Zodiac, because Darlene Suennen, Darlene Farron's dad, Leo, worked at Mare Island, and I think he did electronics work on these ships. Mare Island is where they would repair and overhaul, or shipyards would build a ship, and then Mare Island is where they would install the radar and stuff, and that's pretty much what Leo Suennen did. So I think it's actually possible Leo Suennen had a lot to do with installing all of this secret radio surveillance type equipment on the Lido and the, is it Leo and Thetis? What were the two ships? You guys might know. We'll come back to that very soon, because we're going to, did you guys watch that episode I'm leading up to? I knew this episode wasn't ready, but you'll see. This, by the way, sit through the boring part. It's about to get good. But this is Nugan Bank involved in, Nugan Bank founded in 73, right before Ike Atkinson makes the deal with Frank Lucas, because Frank Lucas got William Casey. William Casey, I see I don't have a slide quite ready for this. William Casey was really old in addition to being really tall. William Casey was a Wall Street lawyer who created the tax shelter, the American version of the tax shelter. The British already had tax shelters for wealthy people like the Duke of Windsor in the Bahamas. And under FDR, who Casey hated, he considered FDR a commie, under the New Deal and all these new taxes, Casey said, went around to all of his rich friends and all of his rich clients on Wall Street and said, calm down, calm down. You fill out some forms and transfer your money to this particular bank account in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Okay, he is the Jeffrey Epstein before Jeffrey Epstein. He invented this for the Americans in particular, and in particular, these Caribbean tax havens. We should get our own Bahamas. We could set it up like in the Virgin Islands, or open banks in the Bahamas. Like Lend-Lease, where the British turned over all these Navy bases to us in exchange for some Navy destroyers. It had a lot to do with the banking too. So there's William Casey. William Casey, the Jeffrey Epstein before Jeffrey Epstein, doing Jeffrey Epstein stuff in the 30s. When war comes, he happens to come in very, very handy. Where does he get some of these ideas? You may recognize this picture on the right. This little cell of Jolly Jokers, this is at Landsberg prison fortress. This is when Hitler and his cronies have been locked up for the Berhard Putsch of 1922. Okay, here's Dolphy. The guy here that you never heard of was an arms trafficker named Hermann Kriebel. This, of course, is Rudolf Hess. Okay. He's kind of the Ted Sorensen to Hitler's JFK. He's the guy who convinced Hitler that Hitler was the Fuhrer and taught him all this stuff and all this Thule Society stuff. He was born in Egypt, by the way. The guy in the middle is an arms trafficker named Hermann Kriebel. Now, the guy acting goofy with the ukulele, that is Emil Morris. Emil Morris, you've been told that Heinrich Himmler founded the SS. That is not true. Heinrich Himmler's fake, phony SS ID card said number 1. Heinrich Himmler was actually number 83 or something in the SS. Number 1, the man who founded the SS, was a Jewish German named Emil Morris, or Maurice. Emil Maurice, however you want to pronounce it. That's him on the left. He's the guy who founded the SS. And he was at least as Jewish as Hitler. He goes on to run the, not the Waffen-SS, but the other SS that run the camps. And people don't remember that the SS itself, and in particular the camp system and the labor system, and these were enterprises. These were business ventures owned by the SS as a corporation. The SS were not a branch of the German government. They never were. SS officers took over a lot of German government jobs, and they also took over a lot of jobs in German industry, executive level jobs. But they were an enterprise, an off-the-shelf, outside the country, self-sustaining commercial enterprise. They took over the labor service. They were temporary. They were a labor temp service. And they supplied temp labor to German industry, both inside Germany and outside Germany. Germany had a guest worker program, Gastarbeiter, which is exactly like our guest worker. You have these foreigners and they go in. A lot of the people end up at Auschwitz voluntarily join the guest worker program. You can make more money in Germany working for the labor service, which is run by the SS. So that's who these people are. So Iran-Contra. Senator David Boren, Democrat, Oklahoma, chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, and others called the money a slush fund. The concept of the private slush fund is one that is very shocking, Boren said. We really would have a complete loss of constitutional government in this country if you could sell taxpayers' property and set up a fund that the president and Congress would have no control over, he said. He just described the SS. The SS was a corporation, an off-the-shelf, self-sustaining executive action capability, especially in the early days. And then, it's so complicated. Then Casey, so Hermann Kriebel, he's a German arms trafficker. The Germans make the best weapons in the world at this time. Remember, the U.S. government under Franklin Delano Roosevelt, you saw those episodes, right? Franklin Delano Roosevelt, America enters this conflict between China and Japan on China's side to protect the Delano family opium plantation interests and their friends. The Chinese Communist Party have outlawed opium production in the country, and it all gets pushed out to the fringes in places like the Golden Triangle. First Mongolia, which the Japanese conquer, Mongolia and Manchuria. So then they move them to the Golden Triangle, what we call the Golden Triangle. But the British control a lot of that. So a lot of what you see going on before World War II, after World War II, has a lot to do with these old money American families very deep in the government, the deep state. And they're manipulating American foreign policy and military policy to protect, among other things, their own vested financial interests, including that super duper lucrative opium trade. Casey, operating these offshore tax havens and tax shelters in the Caribbean alongside British bankers, conservative British bankers, supplies the money to Kriebel, to buying the weapons from Kriebel, and Kriebel has them shipped to the Kuomintang in China in the 20s and 30s. They were also communists, but they were pro-American, pro-capitalist, pro-opium communists. Before Vang Pao, before the Contras, Kuomintang raised, grew, protected opium production and heroin refining, southwestern China, Cambodia, Laos, Burma, to make the money to buy the weapons from Hermann Kriebel. And these banking transactions were handled by banks. And then Americans, the German-American, no, not the German-American Bund. No, I think he was involved in the German-American Bund. Casey. Like, he had, Kriebel wasn't his only German friend. This drugs for money laundered through Caribbean banks, offshore banks, to buy weapons for anti-communist operations who are growing the drugs. This has been going on a long time, and William Casey is among the people who set this up, going all the way back to the 1930s. And he becomes director of the Central Intelligence Agency after, okay, so this guy, Rudolf Hess, okay, William Casey, if Adolf Hitler is Ronald Reagan, a talented sociopath of an actor, that you could get to play the role of Führer, of national leader, his mentor and campaign manager, his Rudolf Hess, is William Casey, who has a lot of friends, not just in like the Nazis, not like the thuggish Nazis, but the Thule Society and these proto-Nazis who were around after the war, who we continue to do business with because they're anti-commie, right? It's kind of like they were the white-collar Nazis and they needed a blue-collar army of street thugs, right, to take over the streets of Germany and put somebody in power. And they look around for this puppet they can control, this JFK that they can create and mold and control, and that's Corporal Adolf Hitler. And there's a phony war hero story. Someday we have to talk about the real John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Not so much today. Give me a second. Get a little lump in my throat when I talk about fighting the commies. I myself get a little lump in my throat. I'm skimming over this stuff. So these are the people that Casey deals with. He becomes Ronald Reagan's presidential campaign manager, and as soon as he gets sworn into office, he becomes director of national intelligence, which is de facto director of the CIA. And he arranges for General Secord to be appointed. I think McFarlane was the chair of the National Security Council, and Secord was on it, who'd written this thing dictated by Casey. We need to go back to what we did before World War II. We need to have standalone, off-the-shelf, self-sustaining front companies to carry out American foreign policy. Okay, but now he's like it's 50 years later, and this old giant is still running, pulling strings. And 1980 is when the Nugan Bank thing collapses. So now they need to start another branch of the enterprise. Is this making any sense? This could be better. Obviously. Okay, just repeated, same information. Look, as a stooped, broken down old man, look at this guy tower. Ronald Reagan was what, 6'3"? I mean, he was kind of older at this point. Look how big this guy was. Look how big William Casey was. That's him on the right. And guess who brought Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush together? Ronald Reagan had nothing to do with cocaine trafficking. Ronald Reagan had nothing to do with any of that stuff. I'm not saying Ronald Reagan was a saint. But George H.W. Bush gave Ronald Reagan a fight of his life and then agrees to be vice president? Who brokers that deal? It's William Casey. So you've got the old way of doing things, which was to protect Chinese, Vietnamese warlords, Cambodians, and their opium, and then to raise the money Congress won't appropriate for them to buy American weapons to defend themselves from the commies, you have offshore banks like Nugan Hand. But Nugan Hand was not the first. It was just track 2, track 3, track 4, track 5. Nugan Hand Bank has collapsed. Now you're switching a little bit from the heroin funding to the cocaine. That's where you bring in Bush, he's like this with Manuel Noriega. He's got all these contacts in the South. Right, and you've seen this. You've seen the picture on the right, right? All I could find was this meme. This picture, this is not a Photoshop picture. This is young Bill Clinton. This is George W. Bush, and this is George Wallace. I got a clip of George Carlin, but I don't want to get another copyright thing until I go on the new channel. It's all one big club, and you ain't in it. See, I should ignore the chat. Here we go. Here we go. Oh, this slide's out of order. This is Max Ammann. This was he was Hitler's publisher. This was Hitler's publisher. We will talk more about him. He's the Ted Sorensen. Okay? If Hitler's Kennedy, Max Ammann is, he's the Ted Sorensen for Hitler. Ted Sorensen was a Max Ammann he was the personal propaganda minister and manager for Adolf Hitler from the very early days. Have you seen these pictures? Just for fun. Professor Hofshauser on the left was when World War I was over. Rudolf Hess went to university, and his professor Hofshauser, where he picked up this concept of Lebensraum, which he then dictates. Like, Adolf Hitler didn't write Mein Kampf, okay? Mein Kampf was written for Adolf Hitler. It's kind of a jumble of pamphlets and things, and they kind of jumbled it all together. The first edition of Mein Kampf is incomprehensible. Incomprehensible. But it's mostly dictated by Rudolf Hess. I love the picture on the right. Rudolf Hess, of course, had a lot of friends in England and Scotland. The Sinclairs. He loved England. He absolutely loved England. Hi, Walter. You didn't miss a whole lot. You missed a lot of me stumbling over. This is not a very finished episode. What was track 1? Okay, so what's this got to do with Carl Denaro? As you may recall, I still haven't shown you this stuff yet. I still haven't got this episode yet. We'll probably have to circle around. We're going to maybe finish Son of Sam and then go way back in the past and circle back around again and eventually come back to Nugan Hand and come back to Son of Sam. But this was the thing that sealed the deal, that Maury Terry was right. The big things were right. This is Nugan Hand selling heroin, distributing it through many channels, including but not limited to the blood supply network that comes from Hawaii to the mainland and from there on. And Reynolds Securities, you have the Reynolds family. They also have Reynolds Aluminum in Australia and New Zealand and those bauxite mines. Nugan Hand Bank, Reynolds Securities, a bunch of other fairly right-wing, but the Australian and New Zealand governments had voted hard left, pretty hard left. They slapped like 40%, 50% taxes on these corporations. So they come up with this plan to change the government, which succeeds. Starting Monday, February 1st, 1976, when Christine was shot the night of January 30th, that weekend, Saturday night, Christine is shot dead. She is a secretary, she's not just making coffee and copies. Okay, she comes from a business family, an Austrian business family, remember that. And she's an executive secretary of some kind at Reynolds Securities. And so 48 hours before they changed the governments of Australia and New Zealand. And remember, they're across the international date line, right? 24 hours, 36 hours, Christine Freund is shot dead. And then Carl Denaro, when he recovers from his injuries, he takes her place. He's the person who knows who's coming and going and who's seeing who at Reynolds Securities and Sherman and Stern, or Sherman and whoever, the lawyers. This is Carl. First, Donna Lauria, who is an ambulance technician. She's the person who stocks the ambulances at that hospital with blood and blood products when they bring a patient in. Maybe their blood has expired and the temperature got. She has access to that blood. That doesn't mean she is voluntarily cooperating in any kind of heroin. She wouldn't have gotten shot if she was voluntarily cooperating. This is what Carl keeps trying to say, that no, Carl, you got shot because you and your family were not cooperating the way they were expected. Carl's stepfather is the senior vice president in charge of money laundering at Citibank, which is a correspondent bank. Remember, I told you what a correspondent bank is. International correspondent bank with Nugan Hand. They're laundering all kinds of money, not just the heroin money, okay? So Donna Lauria is shot at the end of July 31st, or the night of the 29th, 30th, something like that, 76. A couple weeks later, Carl enlists in the Air Force, delayed muster. A couple days before he shows up for muster, he gets shot. After he gets shot, Lamino Damazzi may or may not have something to do with this. Then Christine Freund is shot till January 30-something, 76. And then Carl pretty much takes her place. He might not know exactly what he was doing there, but he pretty much takes her place. Oh, the necklace, we'll come back to the necklace a couple episodes down the road. Right, so February 1st, publicly, police already suspect. They've already suspected pretty much from day one. After Carl got shot, this might be the same, except Donna Lauria was in the Bronx, and then you get Lamino Damazzi, and then you get Christine Freund. Cops are already they do think there's a possible connection. All the victims are not telling the cops the truth, or the survivors, like John Deal, are obviously not telling the cops the truth. Lamino Damazzi did not tell the cops the truth. Carl and Rosemary did not tell the cops the truth, and Jody Valenti did not tell the cops the truth. So they're all up to something, probably organized crime. Almost all of them have Italian last names. And they're lying to the cops, and they're all shot with what might be the same pistol. There's something going on here that... Okay, so this is February 1st. This first appears in the news media. Oh, this is out of order. February 6th, Carl gives his first interview. This one to Newsday. This was the big newspaper on Long Island. He gives his interview. He's shooting his mouth off. Like, all of a sudden, it's super duper important for Carl's shooting to be linked to the Son of Sam case. And Carl's the one doing all the talking, posing for all the pictures. This is Carl. This is the spring of 77. This is February, and then March, and then finally June of 77. Around May or June, when he's recovered. Oh, June of 77. See, I got a lot of typos. I copy and paste things. June of 77, Carl goes to work at Citibank. This is before Stacy Moskowitz gets shot. He's a little vague on when he exactly started working there. And I'm telling you, the company was either Ace Security or it might have been Wackanut. But he won't say what company it was he worked for. Then Armienti starts his probe in 79, and nobody can find Carl.
Were you able to find out where Carl is located now, or his parents?
Oh, I know his parents live on 29th Avenue in Whitestone, but you see, his father and mother were divorced a long time ago, and his mother got remarried again recently.
75.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know his father's last name.
It's Denaro. I think she's talking about Gus Jacobs. Austrian banker. The point is, Carl disappeared. Now, Rosemary knew, so Carl said he wasn't allowed to speak to Rosemary anymore By the time he got out of the hospital, he couldn't speak to Rosemary anymore. 2.5 years later, she's telling Army Auntie, 3 years later, she's telling Army Auntie, he moved to Texas and he moved from Texas to Long Beach. What's really weirdly specific about that is she claims she doesn't know the phone number, claims there's no contact. How did she know he went from Texas to Long Beach? And you know, Carl to this day will not tell anybody where in Texas he was. He'll say he was in Long Beach, California. And Rosemary knew that. Texas, that's a pretty big state, Carl. It's not like going to Rhode Island. It's not like going to Puerto Rico. It's not like going to Hawaii. Texas is a big state. Almost as big as California. Where were you in Texas? So anyway, what's going on here?
A mysterious death, the body later dug up from its grave.
Oh yeah, I did promise you this. I did promise you this. Who figured out what's funny about this picture of John Carr's body, supposedly John Carr's body? What's so funny about this? I don't mean to trigger anybody. Has anybody ever handled dead bodies? In particular, has anybody ever handled dead bodies on a battlefield? What's the first thing you do before you put the bodies in the bag? You get the grave digger people, they go around and they do, what's the first thing they do to those bodies before they even put them in the bags? You try to identify them. You look for dog tags, and you do, what's the second thing you do before the boys with the bags come around? What do you do? Or before you get the bags off the truck, what do you do? Does anybody know? What do you do? Anybody ever, ambulance crew, EMT? It's wintertime in North Dakota. You got a lot of guys getting drunk and high, and they fall asleep on the side of the, or they die of homeless people. They die of hypothermia. What's the first thing you do? Does anybody know? There's a big lag in the chat. I need to give you people time. What's funny about these hands? It looks like he died with jazz hands, but they're not. The thumbs are not extended. The thumbs are like this, and the fingers are extended. Now, obviously, rigor mortis has set in, but nobody dies like this. And you don't shoot yourself, and then your hands go like this, and then they go down in front of you, and then you go face forward on the floor. That's not what happens. Why isn't there any blood on the bedspread of this waterbed, by the way? If he was sitting on if you look where his body is, supposedly they turned the body over right here. They just roll the body over like he was. But if you look at that, if you look at his left shoulder and you roll him to the left, he's not lying flat on the floor. See how his shirt is just totally soaked up the blood? So they must have not rolled him over. How can I show you this? They couldn't have rolled him over like this. They must have rolled him over like this. How did his hands get both hands, fingers extended, thumbs like this, stuck in rigor mortis? How did this happen if he shot himself in the head? Well, the fingers aren't folded. Bodies on the battlefield. Drunks froze to death on the side of the road or in a back alley. You get them back, on the battlefield, the first thing you got to do is you got to get their fingerprints. You find the dog tags and you get the fingerprints. And then you mark the body. At the morgue, they take your fingerprints, especially if you're a John Doe. They can't find ID, John Doe. People die like this. After rigor mortis sets in, you have to straighten out the fingers like this so you can get the fingerprints and the palm prints. The thumb, if you extend the thumb like this, see how the thumb doesn't lie as flat as the other fingers? So you leave the thumb like this so you can get the thumbprint. Take the pad, you get the fingerprints from both hands. This corpse was fingerprinted after rigor mortis set in, but before the front of his head was blown off and the blood dumped all over the carpet to soak in. This man was dead before he hit the floor. He was not only dead, he was picked up, put the body in like this, so it goes on this gurney, so it fits in the drawer at the morgue. And somebody straightened his fingers and thumb so they could get his fingerprints. I don't have the slide ready, but you remember a couple peculiar things about this case. Face blown off, they had to identify the body by the fingerprints, but then they lost the fingerprint card, and then a week or two later, somebody mailed it back in. That's funny. The second question is, if they took the fingerprints while the body was still in situ, where was the guy who took the fingerprints? Where was he? Was he kneeling on the chest of the corpse? Was he lying face down on the waterbed? The problem with that is, look, it's a hard-sided waterbed. Remember those old-fashioned waterbeds? Get a 1x12, and then, right, he's lying on the thing, and he's slowly... No. What happened was, remember the O'Connors? This is the apartment where the body was found. You know what, was he a lieutenant? You know what Mr. O'Connor did for a living, right? Does anybody know? I don't want to wait for the chat to catch up. He ran the emergency room at the Minot Air Force Base Hospital. I don't think he was an officer. Was he a master sergeant maybe? He knew and drank beers with every meat truck driver in town. And they would find a lot of John Does up there. And in the wintertime, pass out drunk, die of exposure. If they needed a body, approximately, remember it's 2 inches too short to be John Carr, the fingerprints got lost and somebody mailed them in, etc., etc., etc. If somebody wanted to fake John Carr's death, where do you get a corpse? Well, you just wait a few days, we'll find one on the side of the road. I don't see much of a mystery here except who is this John Doe? He might not have been a John Doe. They might have just threw his wallet away and claimed he was a John Doe. Now, who would do a thing like that?
A mysterious death, the body later dug up from its grave.
They're talking about Frank Nugent himself. Well, how much do you really know about the Carrs? The slide is out of order. This is John Carr, I think it's his senior year of high school. This is 1966. This is, I'm sorry, I can't see that, I'm on radio. Can you see that? Can you see the date? 66, I think. Buffalo, New York, McKinley Vocational High School, 1964. No, not 1964. He was born in 47. He was born in 47. I think this is his junior year of high school. Does anybody know? This is him. Did anybody ever mention John Carr playing the saxophone before? And then these pictures, when he's younger, he looks exactly like his dad. Did you notice that? That's John Carr right there. Before he graduated and joined the Air Force. Could have been a Native American, Pat Thomas. You're absolutely right. That could have been a Native American. But I think that, I don't know if the skin tone would have been the hair color. Could have been somebody who, dropped dead on the reservation up there. Did anybody remember anybody saying anything about John Carr playing the saxophone? This is John in the, I don't remember what this is. Oh, this might be student council or something. This is student council or something. There he is again. I'll let you feast your eyes on that a moment. This is in Buffalo, New York. No, he did not go to high school in Yonkers. As a matter of fact, Sam Carr was born in Yonkers, but he did not live his whole life in Yonkers. I'll get to that slide in a minute. Here's Michael Carr. He is at South Park High School, Buffalo, New York. This is his picture from This one might be 1966. Can I zoom in on this? Let me see if I can. I don't think I can zoom in on this on a slideshow. But their father, Samuel Carr, this is his enlistment record when he enlisted in the U.S. Army, May of 1942. Erie County, New York, Buffalo, New York. Sam was born in Yonkers, but he was living in Buffalo, New York in 1942 when he enlisted in the Army, and apparently he and Frances continued to live there for quite a few years until at least until John graduated from high school, or close to graduating from high school and joining the Air Force. Carl Carr of Narconon looks like Sam Carr. That's really interesting, Pat Thomas. Why in Buffalo? It's going to matter later when we talk about the son of Sam and David Berkowitz and Carl's interesting friends and those guys. We'll get to some of that today. Did Manny ever come up with any of this? I'm not knocking Manny. He's done some good episodes, but there's something funny going on there. And this information wasn't that hard to find. I've just been sitting on it, waiting to charge people money. Sort of. Yeah, it's South Park High School, Buffalo, New York, not South Park, Colorado. I knew some girls from Canyon City, which is the next town down the road from South Park, and they said they knew a lot of the people who were characters. This was back in the day. They knew people who were characters. I don't think they knew, is it Trey Parker and whatever? They didn't know them, but they knew. They had friends at South Park. They would, these girls were cheerleaders and whatnot. These girls were tough. These girls made Susan Atkins and Linda Kasabian look like Anne Hesh. That's not too soon, is it? Whose insurance pays for that head injury, Carl? That was the result of the driver operating the motor vehicle. So the car insurance company will be liable for damages to the house before the homeowner's insurance. I'll tell you how that case is going to get subrogated. Why did Maurice say he had homeroom with John Carr? Fire Pixie, I hate to be the one to have to break this to you, but sometimes people lie. And in this particular case, in Zodiac, in Manson, in Son of Sam, and Dean Corll, a lot of people lie. A lot of people lie. But you know what else? Sometimes people don't remember shit 45 years later the way they think they remember it. My favorite grand jury testimony is former President Ronald Reagan or President Ronald Reagan testifying in front of the grand jury. I think it was Iran-Contra. Where were you in something 1983? Who'd you talk to? And Ronald Reagan just looks around the courtroom and he says, anybody here who remembers what they did, who they talked to, and what they said on October something 1983, raise your hands. He was out of order, but it was a good rhetorical question. Who the hell remembers something like that? You mean Maury Terry? Yeah, that's a really good question. Unless Maury Terry went to high school in Buffalo, New York. Did Maury Terry go to high school in Buffalo, New York? We'll have to find that out. Are there pictures of Maury Terry? I don't think it was grade school because I'm pretty sure Sam and Francis Carr Sam Carr lived in Buffalo from before World War II until after John joined the Air Force. Now, maybe he knew Michael Carr, who was younger, but John Carr graduated from South Park High School, or not South Park High School, from that vocational high school, and that's where he learned to be a mechanic in Buffalo, New York. It is possible that Sam and Francis and Wheat and Michael moved back to Yonkers and John stayed with friends or relatives to graduate from that high school. That happened a lot. One of my friends from high school, his military family and his grandparents lived in the town where I wasn't born. I grew up there and had friends there. And I knew his cousins, and then he stayed with his grandparents for high school because he had... we were the lucky, speaking of lucky devils, we were the lucky ones he stayed friends with. So he had friends there in high school, and he had his grandparents, and he liked his grandparents and uncles and whatnot, and they liked him, and he stayed there. It's possible John stayed behind in Buffalo, but it's interesting if you look at the actual dates when the Nettos actually move into their house and the Carrs actually move into their house on Warburton Avenue. But this is John and Michael Carr. And I know that because this is Sam and Francis Carr. You ain't seen nothing yet. Let me let you catch your breath. First of all, they were blonde haired and up to no good. I assumed they were at least as Irish as I am. Carr, that's an Irish name, or it can be Scots-Irish, probably Scots-Irish, but that's not their name. Did Maney find out that their real name is not Carr, their family name is Czar? In 1920, Sam Carr's parents, Mikhail, and his new wife, Ellen Carr, put down on their census forms that they are immigrants from Russia. They are not yet naturalized. And there's Sam, and there's his little sister, Julia, who we will come back to. And this is them. I know this is them. I'm going to flip through this kind of fast. I'm not going to show you, because this is a rough draft episode. In the 1920 census, they're from Russia, but they're not naturalized citizens. No, Tsar, C-Z-A-R, like the Russian Tsar. 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 Common name. It's like king, like Reyes, right? Reyes is king. Spanish name Reyes. Real. You know, people take the name of their name is king. Their name is. Now here's where it gets interesting. the 1915 New York State Census, Mikhail and Michalina. This is Wheat's grandmother, birth grandmother, blood grandmother. Sam Carr's mother is Michalina, just like Wheat. This census form says they're from Österreich, the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So they might be Russians from the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And that's really interesting when we talk about Jewish conversos, basically the Austro-Hungarian, the Hungarian version of a converso, a Jew converted to Catholicism. Hold that in mind. The Cross of Lorraine is not the Cross of Lorraine. It was adopted as the Cross of Lorraine. It originates in Hungary among Jewish conversos in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. What's that got to do with World War II? What's that got to do with the Manson family? Stay plugged into the Stones Unturned podcast. Russian Orthodox Church outside Russia, that's not bad. Oh, Peter Levenda hung out, right? Because the Levendas, that's a Slovenian name. That's the old Austro-Hungarian Empire. And after World War I, it's Czechoslovakia. The British do this on purpose. They create countries that are internally at civil war so that they, right? Nice catch, Laz. Thank you very much. Help yourself to a pumpkin sticker. In the 1910 census, they're in the 1910 census as well. Okay, these are the Carrs. Michael Carr dies October 4th, 1979. October 1979, the New York Times reports on Army Anti's new investigation into the Son of Sam killings. There's a slide out of place. Crap. Well, the reward is handed out October 19th. Carl leaves town. Now, he told me, you know how he loves to split hairs. Ah, crap. Oh, you're not supposed to see that. Till the next episode. Maybe I'll show it to you. Maybe we'll come back to this. Let me see where I'm supposed to be. You'll see it real soon. Like, this is probably part 2 of a 3-part episode on... I'm going to talk about Carl Denaro in just a minute. I promise. You needed to know all of this stuff so that this stuff about Carl's family would make sense. But one of the things was I've been waiting and waiting for someone to figure out. One buckaroo lucky devil had said something on my own website that John Carr... No. Somebody, one of the lucky devils or somebody sent along something, I'm looking for it, email or something, said that Sam Carr, John and Michael Carr's father, had been the president of the local Communist Party in Buffalo, New York. And this explains why he and Julia were under investigation in connection with the Whitaker Chambers spy case. Because Sam Carr and Francis, he married Francis, he had been in the counterintelligence corps, not counterintelligence corps per se, but probably, I think the security staff, the MPs who guarded secure installations like the SS officers' POW camp in Texas, where Sam Walton of Walmart, where he was a guard, his military records say Counterintelligence Corps. And by the way, I got Sam Carr's information. I hope to receive his DD-214, which was stored in Maryland and not here in St. Louis. See, Sam Carr's DD-214 was not filed here at the National Archives in St. Louis, according to the records. It's in Baltimore. It's in Maryland. It's top secret. There won't be top secret information. There'll be a lot of pages missing from his file. But the Norton bomb site spy ring, the second one scandal, then he and his sister Julia are hauled in by the FBI and questioned over the Whitaker Chambers Alger Hiss case. And somebody had said several months ago, John Carr had been the president of the Communist Party in Buffalo, New York, which would put them in contact with some very interesting people in Buffalo, New York. And by golly, they did live in Buffalo, New York before the war and for 20 years after the war before they moved back. He was born in Yonkers, according to all the records. But he lived in Buffalo, and he moved to Buffalo apparently to work for the Communist Party in Buffalo, New York. So you get Carl. These slides are later. Carl, Donna Lauria, the first Nugan hand-linked victim I can find, shot in New York in '76. So you get John Carr, who was stationed at Bangkok Air Force Base at the same time Richard Secord is there. John Carr is rotated stateside around Christmas of 74, the end of 74. January 75, this is like 3 weeks later, Ike Atkinson and then Frank Lucas are busted. Well, who takes over trafficking the heroin into Harlem? It's not like Harlem went dry. Where's the documentary about how many customers did Frank Lucas have in Harlem? They weren't shipping the heroin in coffins. Ike said Frank showed up out of the clear blue sky in Bangkok and wanted to see what was going on. And because Ike had hired a cabinet maker but he said, oh, we're building coffins. Their cover story was they were building coffins. But Ike said that, no, we were taking teakwood furniture that was being exported by these office, and we would hollow out the furniture and put the heroin in it and put it back together. There is a very famous, there is, Nugan Hand took that over. Nugan Hand's first shipment of heroin to Honolulu was shipped in some teakwood furniture that this government official was bringing back with him from Southeast Asia in 75. So that heroin gets put into the blood supply distribution network. Remember, Donna Lauria and her mother and her brother. Donna's mother and brother both worked in hospital risk management, which in the hospitals is called patient safety, but it's keeping the entire hospital safe. Used to be for the sake of the patients, but it's for everybody now. Arthur Michael Pascal would probably delivered it by hand, go around the hospitals to the administrators like Rose Lauria and drop off this book and then come back and say, we can provide all the services mentioned in this book. And he brags about pioneering an inventory control system for a chain of electronic stores who were losing the employees, and the Teamster truck drivers were losing half of the inventory for this company. And he said it wasn't so much about inventory control as it was document control. That the manifest, the shipping invoice, when it left the warehouse distribution center to go to the stereo store, the invoice would be altered when it arrived at the store, so you didn't notice that there were thousands of dollars worth of stereo equipment missing. He talks very specifically about how he and his company fixed that system electronically using what we now know was the Raycom system, which Reynolds Securities was an angel investor, an early adopter, and they helped sell this system to like Citibank. That's what he was doing there. And it turns out he was using his position to infiltrate his own people through those background checks. People like Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer was trained as a medic in the Army, and when he got out of the Army, he went to work in a blood bank. Are you with me? No, there's more. There's someone else, but I'll circle back around to that. Where was I? So, the first that I know of. Now, you have Galante going to war against the Gambino family over heroin smuggling. This is trying to take over, a lot of this has to do with taking over Frank Lucas's old territory, right? Because he didn't deal with the mafia. He had his own hookup with Ike Atkinson. So you got the CIA, you have Casey and Secord fighting with the mafia over Frank Lucas's heroin distribution, retail distribution network. That's part of what's going on in New York City. Donna Lauria gets caught in the crossfire somehow. Maybe she stumbled over something. Maybe this was a warning to her mother and her brother and to other people who worked at these places. Remember, there were other people who were murdered, like medical students and people who were murdered at like Columbia University Medical Center and Presbyterian Hospital. Remember, there were other murders that weren't necessarily linked to Son of Sam until now. But we know Donna Lauria, we pretty much the same weapon between Donna Lauria, maybe Carl Denaro, Lamino DeMazzi, Christine Freund, all the way up to Stacy Moskowitz. Whose next door neighbor was a Russian, Les? So then Carl gets shot. Then Carl goes to work at Citibank, taking Christine's place, meeting the public. He's meeting the public every day. Not only keeping track of names, but he could see by face. Or when the feds come in, investigating possible Nugan Bank or any other funny business that Citibank is involved in, when they come in, they don't necessarily sign in, but they flash their badges and they get on the elevator and Carl gets on the phone and he calls upstairs and says some feds are on their way up to see you. You only need about 30 seconds notice while they're making that elevator ride. That's what, I'm not saying I can prove Carl did these things. I'm saying Carl was in a position to do these things, and it's really funny that he spends his whole career like that. And it's really funny it's at Citibank, and it's really funny. He did say it was the same building Christine worked in, but it was after she got shot. Well, yeah, they need to replace her. Somebody needs to replace her. So Carl, and then Carl... Yeah, give me a minute. Let me find, there's a slide I'm looking for. Give me 1 second. I don't want to confuse you people by showing you slides out of order. You know how Carl loves to split hairs? I've pointed that out before, and I claimed that I have used that to get him to tell me the truth for once. Where... Didn't I just tell you that I fixed those slides before I started the stream? Let me see if it's up here. Okay, there's that one. Where's the one I fixed before the stream started? Is this the one? Here it is. I think this is the one. It's close enough for now. He worked at the security desk for a few months, then applied to be the truck dock manager at the soon-to-be-open Citicorp Center, which is still there, Citigroup building, at 599 to 601 Lexington Avenue. I showed you those pictures. I'll show you the pictures again. That's the job where you would have to have an uncle in the Longshoremen's Union to get that job. Then, he said he left Citigroup in 78. He says August of 78. When did John Carr die? February of 78. Not a lot of cause and effect relationship there. How would Carl even know John Carr was dead? He says he left in August of 78. Now, I haven't seen any proof of this. He says he left for Texas. He never did say the town. And headed to Texas to get away from the notoriety of Son of Sam. Oh, yeah. That's what you got away from. Funny. All of a sudden, in the summer of 78, he takes off. Didn't like Texas and moved to Long Beach, California, moved back in April 1980. When did his probe really fizzle out? If he's interviewing people in November of 79, Christmas and New Year's come and go, and the heat finally dies down, and Carl's parents tell him it's time to come home. Then he took a very interesting job as soon as he got home. Yeah, the notoriety over Son of Sam had pretty much died down by spring of 1980, right? He didn't come home for Christmas or New Year's. Nobody could find him. But those are the kind of... I love it when Carl splits hairs. I love it. I'm waiting for him to split this hair. Yeah, let's listen to this one more time.
Were you able to find out where Carl is located now, or his parents?
Oh, I know his parents live on 29th Avenue in Whitestone. But, you see, his father and mother were divorced a long time ago, and his mother got remarried again recently.
Were you able to find out where Carl is located now, or his parents?
A mysterious death, the body later dug up from its grave.
So, you caught that, right? She knows he went to Texas and then went to Long Beach. Like, it's amazing the things that Rosemary says that are totally different from things that Carl says, and the things that it's almost like they're both reading from the same script. How did she know in November of 79, how did she know that he went to Texas and Long Beach but couldn't reach him? He wasn't back yet, according to Carl. According to Carl, he did not come home as soon as Michael Carr was dead. Now, that was in the New York papers. According to Carl, he didn't come home until April of 1980. I don't know how to prove that. Can you prove that, Carl? Did Sweet Pea or anybody else, Thomas Croak, did Carl ever get you those insurance papers that you said, he said, I don't know. I don't know. Carmen Galante's dead July 1979. Michael Carr's dead October 1979. So moving right along. Yeah, it turns out that Sam Carr is a commie. He's a Russian commie, and I wonder if he's a Jewish converso. His grandparents, Jewish conversos. Mikhail Tsar, that's interesting. So, I wonder if Carl ended up in this... Let me show you something. I'll show it to you again when I get this episode cleaned up and done again. I don't think you can see this report. This is a report that detectives received on August the 3rd, 1977. This is a couple of days after Stacy Moskowitz was killed. Mr. Earl Randall, present at this office August 3rd, and states that a man working at the company he works for might be the son of Sam. The name of the subject is Jim Favors, white male, early 50s, 5'7", that subject lived somewhere in New Jersey. States that subject has a yellow Volkswagen. Now remember, they're looking for a yellow Volkswagen. Remember, I'll go over Berkowitz and connections to victims in a future episode soon. Remember, in real life, Cecilia Davis did not tell police that she saw David Berkowitz pull the parking ticket off the windshield of his Ford Galaxy. She didn't say that at all. She said the son of Sam got out of a yellow-orange Volkswagen. It was another lady who called the police and said, I got a ticket that night. Maybe a parking ticket. Maybe the son of Sam got a parking ticket. You ought to check. That had nothing to do with Cecilia Davis. We're going to talk about disinformation campaigns. And it's the commissioner of the police, Dodd, was that his name? Holds that press conference where he just tells, like the whole article is nothing but false information. And that includes this story about Cecilia Davis seeing Berkowitz Right. He's the one who says that Berkowitz owned a cream-colored Ford Galaxy. No, Berkowitz's car was white. There are lots of color photographs. The title says it was white. It was white. Yeah, Dahmer still owned one of those boxes that you pack the blood in and organs, right? When was Dahmer discharged from the Army? States the subject has a yellow Volkswagen and that they both work, the informant, or the person, and this Jim Favors both work at not Time magazine. Does anybody remember? Is anybody young enough to remember TIME Trucking? Remember them? Do you remember them? Remember they went broke between... Now, there's a lot going on here, which is very believable. So he's talking about they both work at the trucking company. Jim Favors and this Earl Randall work at the trucking company. And Earl Randall's telling cops he might be the son of Sam. Not only does he own a yellow Volkswagen, he doesn't know the license plate of the subject's car, but states that it is a Texas plate, states that the subject looks like the sketch of Sam, but that he has higher cheekbones. Now remember these super fishy sketches that were done? The witnesses who came forward a couple of days after the Moskowitz murder was in the paper, and it was reported in the papers that several witnesses gave a new description of the suspect to police. And these were the sketches that resulted, and I said that they look an awful lot like Rodney Alcala, but I couldn't pin down. And Rodney Alcala was living in New York in 1977, murdering people. But everybody thought he drove he drove compact cars, but none of them were yellow Volkswagens, right? Codd, Police Commissioner Codd. Well, Jim Favors Jr. does look a hell of a lot like those two sketches of the son of Sam. And he graduated from South Park High School in Beaumont, Texas. I lost this slide. I couldn't find it this morning. As you may recall, Beaumont, Texas is 45 minutes east of Houston, maybe an hour depending on what part of Houston you live in. John Carr's ex-wife and little girl lived in Beaumont, Texas. Remember, Manny said he didn't look like there was any way David Berkowitz could drive his piece of shit Galaxy to Houston and back. Now, because the .44 caliber Charter Arms revolver found in Berkowitz's possession, found in the car, found in the apartment. It's not just the apartment photographs that are fishy. Have you seen the pictures inside Berkowitz's car? To make a long story short, for today's purposes, that gun had a serial number. It was an older model. It was a used one. It was purchased by a man named Billy Dan Parker in Houston, Texas. He said he bought it for Berkowitz. But then if these other stories about Berkowitz first drove to Boynton Beach, Florida, to visit his father. Then he stopped on the west coast of Florida. He stopped at Hollywood, Florida, Clearwater, Florida, to visit that Christian, it's the Way, right? They had a camp there, commune there, right? And then there's a botanical garden there, which is interesting. See, I'll never be finished making these episodes. If that's true, Dahmer was living there he wasn't living there at the time, but Dahmer lived in Hollywood, Florida. And his prison pastor, he got God just like Berkowitz. Just like Berkowitz, this prison pastor, he gets God, Dahmer, blah, 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 before Dahmer was bumped off, like Berkowitz was supposed to be bumped off, remember? He's from the Way. It's not Jesus people, it's the Way. Then supposedly drove to Houston and pick up this gun. But it'd be so much easier for Billy Dan Parker to just give the gun to John Carr's ex-wife and John Carr could pick it up, or somebody could pick it up and bring it back. Well, if Jim Favors and his dad are truckers, and if Jim Favors Jr. grew up and graduated from high school in South Park High School in Beaumont, Texas, how's that for a coincidence? I don't know what that means. I really don't. If this guy was seen at the site of the Moskowitz shooting, his hair would have grown out maybe. And he's from Beaumont, Texas. I just wonder if that's where Carl stayed, was Beaumont, Texas. Because in the next episode, it's funny. I think I might have figured out where Carl was staying in Long Beach, California. He does not get an apartment, or more importantly, he does not get a telephone in his name in either Texas or California, ever. So he stayed with somebody. Family? I couldn't find any from either side of his family who lived in Texas and Long Beach, California. But if he stayed with the Favor family in Beaumont, Texas, and then stayed with this other family I'm going to show you in the next episode in Long Beach, California, that would be an interesting coincidence, as you shall see. Doesn't mean anything yet. I thought this was interesting. I thought this was real interesting. Parker, did I say something? Laz, are you asking me about a Parker? See, the new website will have you could DM me directly with a question instead of me interrupting your chats so rudely. Nice expression, Sticky March. You can't get a zigzag paper between these people. You're absolutely right. You ain't seen nothing yet. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, that's a sick joke. You haven't heard anything yet, Sticky Marks. I forgot. I totally forgot. I'm the most insensitive clod. I didn't do that on purpose. I did it because I'm thoughtless and careless and have no business talking to the public. Parker? It's Jim Favors, Favors. And Jim Favors Sr. would have been about 52 in 77, but his son, junior of high school, 61, 16 years old in 61. He was born in 45. He would have been about 32. Would have been about 31, 32. Maybe not the shooter, but maybe present. I just thought it was funny that this guy does look like this revised sketches, and that he lived in Beaumont, Texas, where John Carr's ex-wife lived. Don't know. That doesn't prove Carl lived there. But it's funny he won't even name the town he lived in. I just thought that was really funny. Well, speaking of weapons trafficking, you know how Leonard Lake got busted out of the Marine Corps, right? He was stealing weapons and selling them on the black market. But he wasn't selling them directly to the Viet Cong. He was apparently selling them to the Enterprise, who was selling them to the Hmong, Vang Pao. Don't forget that. Thanks, Sticky March. You're a nice guy. Thank God my fans are nice people. This isn't all by itself. This proves less than nothing, but you will see. I probably won't get to it today. You will. It's already 2 o'clock. You will see. Oh, I'm sorry. Here is a close-up. You can see this guy's picture better. I'm sorry. I'll let you see that. South Park High School, Beaumont, Texas. I don't think the South Park High School means a damn thing unless it's some kind of private school to have like a national chain. Maybe we should do some research on that. Because this guy would be a few years younger. This guy would be about Michael Carr's age. Michael Carr was born in 52. No, this guy was born in 45. He'd be a year or two older than John Carr, right? He'd be a year or two older than John Carr. South Park High School, Beaumont, Texas. And they did live in Texas. There's another picture of him. It shows he has that really broad mouth. So we went over this again about Galante, and I'll just say that. We don't have to go over it again today. Once again, the Denaro family tree. We went over this once. I'll go through it real quick. It's already 2 o'clock. Remember, same thing. His grandpa, Salvatore, came from the old country, Sicily or maybe Calabria, probably Sicily. It's a Sicilian name. Comes to New York, goes to work on the docks. Then he disappears from the 1930 census. Then he's back in the 1940 census with a different wife and a bunch more kids who may or may not have been born in America. Carl's father, Constantino, was definitely born in America. And they're obviously working, they wouldn't consider the mafia to be a criminal organization anyway. They would consider, my God, if you're Sicilian and you go to work in a new country, you wouldn't want to just go there. You don't consider it a criminal organization. It's the thing that protects you from the criminals, from the Irish gangs, from the Jewish gangs. That's what they are. And they help you find jobs, and they help take care of your family when you get shot in a car and the car insurance won't pay. That's what they're there for. They're like the Amish. Really, they're kind of like the Amish. In America in particular, some of these guys get super greedy and right. So, this is how Carl gets the job on the loading docks at Citigroup Center before he suddenly has to leave town. Why can't he go up to upstate New York and stay with his dad? I don't understand. His dad was still alive. Why couldn't you just go stay with your dad, Carl? Why'd you have to go to Texas and Long Beach? I might have an answer to that question. The point is, what's this got to do with Richard Secord and Iran-Contra and Oliver North? Sebastian Denaro registered for the draft. Sebastian Denaro enlisted in the U.S. Army. One of Carl's older uncles who were probably born in the old country. It's hard to tell for sure. He says he was born in Brooklyn, but Carl said his grandpa did not come to America till 23, and then Carl's dad, Constantino's born in 24. So Carmelo and Sebastian and the older kids, the oldest one, Joe, remember Joe, we'll come back to him in a minute. They had to be born in Sicily if Carl is, and he might not know. He might have been lied to, like Manny. He might not know everything. Carmelo, born 1921, here's his draft card. I can't find any record of him serving in the Army or dying or staying in America. He may have been killed in an accident on the docks. Who knows? He might have been mugged. He might have been shot by a rival mobster. He might have been killed by Umberto Anastasio for not wanting to join the mafia. We just don't know. But you may recall that at this time, see the younger kids, Vito, Orazio, Constantino, I can find records of them. Remember, the Red Hook docks were run by a Sicilian and a Calabrian from Brindisi, a seaport town, Umberto Anastasio and Salvatore Lucania. These are the guys who run the union and everything else that Carl's uncles would have to, you'd have to. Lucania is the one who starts importing heroin in cooperation with Carbone's French connection, which is really the Corsican connection, which goes a long way back, which takes us right back to Lebanon, right back to Cyprus, right back to Benghazi. Like the Sicilians, since the Romans, they worked the docks in Marseille and Napoli and Benghazi and Tripoli and is it Alexandria? Egypt and what's Iran's big seaport? They're the guys who worked the docks since the Romans. There were probably Denaros working the docks in New York Harbor when the Vikings were here. It was probably Denaros who told Columbus the next island over is right. It was probably Denaros. They've been around forever. Doesn't make them bad guys. Yeah, that's right, Matteo Denaro. Denaro is the #1 name in the Sicilian Mafia. Corleone is #2. Denaro's #1. And I'm going to come back to this, but historians think they might have been Jewish bankers who came west with the Arab Empire in the Middle Ages. And so, because they show up, there's a Denaro, I think, is a banker in Sicily in the 10th century before the Crusades. They might have actually had something to do with convincing the Normans who had conquered Sicily to, or who conquered Sicily later, to raise an army and go back to the Middle East, right? It might have been the Denaros. The Denari, the name means money. Carl's name is Carlos Money. How cool is that? And he worked at a bank. He's worked in financial stuff his whole life. His name is Carlos Money. I'll trade names. I would almost trade away my name for Carlos Money. The horror Red Hook, sure. So he goes into business with the French connection before World War II. Lucania does. Then he gets busted by the big hero, Thomas Dewey. There's Operation Husky, which is this invasion of Sicily, but even before then, the OSS are interested in setting up a spy network in Europe through the Sicilian dock workers, who are very well organized, to spy on what's going on, like in Marseille. How many big freighters are coming in? Are they unloading tanks? What are they doing? What are the Germans doing? It stands to reason. But they have to make a deal with Lucania, Lucky Luciano, to get him out of prison so he can run this operation. But that also means you're in bed now with the Lucchese mob. Well, later it's Lucchese, but with the bringing in the heroin through the French connection, who operate through Montreal, down to Niagara Falls, through Buffalo, down through Albany, come straight down that highway, right past Middletown, where Carl's dad settled, and they come down into through Yonkers and down into New York City. And later on, it's the QLF, it's the Quebec Liberation Front, French-Canadian commies, who would be in contact with Sam Carr in Buffalo, New York. In KVD, KGB, they have their own enterprises off the shelf, right? The QLF, there's not a Russian name in the QLF. They have Scots-Irish names. There are McDonald's in the QLF because they're from Quebec. And they all work. They come to America. It's just like the Italians and Sicilians. Like the Sicilians, they come to America, they work the docks. And so where does the mafia? The mafia don't move into Chinatown. The mafia don't move into Dogtown with the Irish. No, the mafia move into the Italian and Sicilian neighborhoods. It stands to reason. All these Quebecois, Beausoleil's, McDonald's, they all go to work in the textile mills, the rug mills, carpet mills in New England, upstate New York, and then the QLF, that's where they get their members from among that community of Quebecois. And they're secretly funded, and maybe the members of the QLF don't always know, oh yeah, the KGB gives us anything we want. No. But for the KGB to insert human intelligence assets into America, in particular New York, that same Underground Railroad, it's been the Underground Railroad since the British took over Quebec province from the French colonialists. It's been the Underground Railroad. Right here in St. Louis, we have the Bissinger family, who still family-owned chocolate business. If you've ever given your Valentine chocolates on Valentine's Day, that's because Napoleon gave Josephine chocolates, and they were made by Monsieur Bissinger. And when Napoleon is deposed, his entire court have to flee France, so they come to New Orleans, and then the Bissingers, right? Have you read the great novel Man in Lascaux? There are a lot of these novels are about French people who fall out of political favor and they escape to the New World, to New Orleans. And the Bissingers they came up the river and came up to St. Louis. The Underground Railroad. Still in operation today. So now the OSS have a deal with the Lucchese mob I'm going to use that as a general term, Luciano's mob, Lucchese mob, trafficking everything, people, drugs, weapons. The KGB used their QLF conduit coming down from Canada through Buffalo. They used that to bring in the people, the weapons, the documents, the instructions, the explosives for their agents. And of course, they're funding the QLF. Remember Fallon? Remember the Puerto Rican nationalist movement? Remember when they tried to assassinate Harry Truman? We will come back to them. Okay, we've been through this before, but now you've got, Navy Commander Charles Radcliffe Haffenden makes these deals. Thomas Dewey. My point is this. I know what happened to Uncle Joe, who was born here when Grandpa Salvatore was here the first time. Uncle Joe stayed. Maybe Salvador went back to the old country. It looks like his wife died. It looks like Petrina died, and so maybe he went back home to find a new wife, old-fashioned wife. Whatever, he comes back, got a new bunch of kids. I can find all the kids except Carmelo. Now, this spy network, they needed not only to make friends with Luciano. They needed guys who they knew were more or less loyal Americans, and it turned out the mafia hated the fascists and Nazis as much as anybody. You needed guys who spoke English you could communicate with and were pro-American, maybe born here or raised here, but still spoke their old Sicilian dialect. They were raised in a household and in a neighborhood and worked on docks where everybody still spoke their Denaro Sicilian dialect of Italian, knew all the code words, knew all the secret handshakes, knew all of that stuff. To go back to Europe undercover and work the docks as contacts. I think there's a greater than 50-50 chance that Carl's uncle Carmelo is one of those guys, and he never came back. And statistically speaking, his Americanized accent would probably give him away on the docks at, say, Palermo or Brindisi or even Napoli, but I'll bet he could work in Benghazi or Tripoli or Marseille. Marseille is the headquarters of the French Connection. It's called the French Connection because of Marseille. But you have Corsicans and Sicilians and Sardinians. Some of these people are probably Phoenician. Been there forever. Why would they change their... Empires come and go. The Money family, they've been around. I think Uncle Carmelo might have been one of these people. So that by the 60s and 70s, the French Connection is still bringing in heroin into New York City through the same old Underground Railroad, and the OSS becomes the CIA, and that includes one of the original members. Now, 5 of the original 12 men who formed the OSS were NKVD agents. They were commie Russian spies. But one of them, or at least one of the early, I don't know if he's one of the 12, but an early OSS guy was virulently anti-commie, and he headed the OSS's European intelligence operation in World War II, including overseeing this network of Sicilian mafia-related spies. That man's name was William Casey. William Casey might have met Uncle Carmelo. He might have operated Uncle Carmelo, but he probably was just the bureaucrat who oversaw this stuff. The guy who had already been making secret money laundering deals with Nazis before they were called Nazis. William Casey knew. It's just beginning to make sense. I'm not doing a very good job today. And he studied how the Germans had laundered, how the SS had laundered their money. And I think he helped before, because look, is it already 2:20? I need to show you more stuff. This is probably enough to chew over, and I need to do a better job of getting the rest of these slides organized better. Here's General Hoyt Vandenberg, U.S. Air Force, just like Secord. Lowell, he's from Lowell, Massachusetts. Where the QLF? Here's Casey and Ronald Reagan. Organized crime on Wall Street, Citicorp. Joe Denaro, the father of Frank Denaro, the junior vice president who worked under Carl's stepfather, Gus Jacobs, at Citibank when Nugan Hand was putting pressure on Citibank and the CIA and their buddies in the CIA are all putting pressure on Gus Jacobs to turn a blind eye to all this money laundering. And Carl gets shot in the middle of all this. That's not a coincidence. I'm sorry. It's not a coincidence. There's some cause and effect there. And that's Frank. Carl's first cousin, Frank. He might not have known. There are a lot of Denaros. There are 1 million Valentis and Denaros, I think, between the two of them. I think there are 500,000 Denaros and 500,000 Valentis in New York City. They're all over the place. I found a Jody Valenti who married a Denaro, and it's not the same Jody Valenti. It even looks like her, but it's not her. It is a different Jody Valenti. I found that out for sure. Yeah, so here's Gustav Jacobs, here's Carl, and Carl's mom, Catherine MacDonald. Technically, her people were apparently Quebecois. From Blind River, Ontario. No, they're from this little tiny town in Quebec, apparently. The same neck of the woods, I think, as the comedian Norm Macdonald. I think Carl's mom might be a second cousin or something to Norm Macdonald, or Norm Macdonald's father. I know Norm speaks a little Quebecois French. It's like Cajun French. I know Norm spoke, God rest his soul, I know Norm spoke some Quebecois French. But Norm might not have grown up in Quebec. I don't know. He might have grown up in Ontario. There, can you see that? I don't want to confuse you with stuff that's out of order. Talked about Carl taking Christine's place, more or less. That doesn't prove that that's what he was doing. He might not have known he was being used, but the mafia use people, and they use family first. That was the building where he worked. There's that, right? He goes to work on the loading docks. There's that pendant again. Yeah, whoops, you're not supposed to see that. Whoops. I knew it. That's the next step. Crap. Bite down on your scopolamine capsules now. Go ahead and bite down on your scopolamine capsules now, and I got to show you some stuff before I show you that stuff. That's why. But hey, that's what you pay for, right? To see things you're not supposed to see. You ain't seen nothing yet. I can't believe this took over 2 hours. You ain't seen nothing yet. Can I skip some of this stuff? Let me just save it. And see how long it's going to take to get the other site up and running and really do this right and maybe get more people watching. But there's so much more to this. Yeah, the finders and the diggers. Don't forget the diggers. Don't forget the diggers in the hate. The leader of the diggers had made a deal with the FBI, COINTELPRO. Don't forget that. They were in the same church. It wasn't a Presbyterian church. Was it an Anglican church? Where previously, before the Summer of Love, late 50s, early 60s, this was where the FBI, COINTELPRO, were spying on Cuban and Dominican commies and Puerto Rican commies. Then they started spying on the hippie movement instead. when Charlie gets out of prison. That's the diggers. I will show you that stuff in great detail. Please don't freeze frame it. Just wait. It won't make any sense until you see those other slides first. I got that stuff all out of order. Yeah. You will see it. You will see it soon. I just wonder if Manny's mom was actually from the Dominican Republic. Because the CIA brought in a whole bunch of Dominicans through the Virgin Islands, giving them Puerto Rican documents so they could come to America. Well, there's a huge Dominican community. It's Yonkers? Is it in Yonkers? Where are they? There's a huge community of Dominicans. That plane that crashed, and that's another one of those funny coincidences about Carl. I have just scratched the surface of Carl Denaro, but I kind of want to give him a chance to peek at these episodes and respond if he wants to. I'm not trying to hide anything from Carl. I'm not out to get Carl. I suspect he doesn't know a lot of this stuff, but there it is. Oh, Prof, Sticky Marks is a woman. I think you told me that once before, and I keep forgetting. Sorry. Sorry. You're going to confuse yourselves even worse than I've confused you if you freeze frame that slide. It won't make any sense to you. But that slide has at least as much to do with Manny and his dad as it does with Carl Denaro. I haven't even scratched the surface of Jim Grossman. I don't know how long this is going to take, but I'm seeing some daylight. At least we're seeing some daylight. We're getting around the flank, finally. But at least a year. I mean, 50 episodes. 2 episodes a week would be 100 episodes. I don't know how many people can put up with the show that long. I got to tell somebody. I haven't scratched the surface of the Nugan Bank yet. You know nothing. But do you see why I say the slides I skip over as fast as possible? If you just do a proper investigation, rule number 1, the more you know about the victims, the more you know about the perpetrators. And look what we find out and you haven't even seen most of it yet. Some of you have seen it, you sent it to me, but I'm the only person. There is no buckaroo who knows the whole story. I shouldn't say things like that. But I'm telling you, there's no mystery. It's just getting it to you, presented in a form that you won't get lost. Just resist the temptation, Brandy. Don't confuse your pretty little heads, Sticky Marks, with what just flashed by on the screen. All will be revealed shortly. I know you're sick and tired of hearing that. I'm sick and tired of telling it. But you people, a lot of this, right? I had no interest in the Son of Sam. None. I had less interest in Son of Sam than I had in Manson. I wasn't interested in Zodiac until... And then it's the same thing, same people, same enterprises, same pattern. You had diggers in your town, Morgana? I'm not saying every digger, but the leader, the main guy in the diggers in the hate was COINTELPRO. There are a lot of arranged marriages in this enterprise, and Manny's mom is 5 years older than his dad, and that if you're going to marry some broad for some third world country, I know the Virgin Islands is not a third world country. The Dominican Republic is. Puerto Rico is America's third world country. Hell, you ever been to Mississippi or Louisiana? No offense. I mean, I haven't been there 35 years probably. Louisiana is a third world country. No white person will admit they speak English, so you have to find a black person. And like you go to Hardee's, you go anywhere, all the managers are white and don't speak English, and all the employees are black, and they have to speak both Cajun French and English, and they translate for you. That's how it was back in the 80s. Yes, Morgana, the new website, comments, there'll be a threaded discussion board for every episode plus other topics. You can just attach pictures, you can attach documents, you can attach links to videos. I just think that it might be better because you're going to get all your money's worth in promo codes and things. Slow down at this point. Get into the really good stuff, and this was not nearly as well organized as even I thought it was. But there's so much. You think, well, you need to know this, and you need to know this, and you need to know this. But I'm telling you, we cracked the whole thing. I just have to show it to you, and it's just going to take a while. Is the new site link on here? Nope. This time, I'm not even sharing the link until it's done. Now, I've already got a good start on it, on my free trial. I just got to get them the money. See, they custom, it's not like YouTube, you just sign up. They came up with a custom package just for the show, which was very impressive, and a very reasonable price. 100 subscribers a month would break even. Easy. And it's still a 1-year contract, so you know it's going to last a year. I mean, I can't jump platforms after this. I couldn't afford to anyway, but this is the platform. So they put together a custom package, all the live streaming I could possibly do, the chat, the thing, I can do webinars, pay-per-views, all. And then on the website, the desktop version of the website will have a store page for merchandise, a page where you can sign up for classes. Because I do teach some good creative writing classes. I do, for all kinds of people. If you're a grant writer, if you're a business, and you write, I teach some business writing classes and get real effective techniques that I just learned over the last 30, 40 years. And I am a professor. I do have 2 bachelor's, a master's, and a master of fine arts. I am a professor, and I've got 20 years worth of teaching experience and 30 some odd years in publishing. I'm a damn good writing teacher. I know a lot about how the brain reads and writes, so and it's just as much fun as this. My classes are fun. I'm a nationally ranked teacher. I score in the top percentiles. No, it's not so much that, Pat. It's not so much I need help with the technical side or producing the show. I need to find a platform that will work. And I thought I found the best one that was out there, but Uscreen had snuck up on them and passed them up. Don't go to that website and look for me, you won't find me. See, that's another problem that will be solved by this new platform. One-stop shopping, once and for all. Not just Stones Unturned podcast, but Professor Thomas Henry Horan, my site. It's not just a website like a WordPress. It's my own OTT, over the top. Video, live streaming, all kinds of webinars, and I can host classes on there. Most of my creative writing classes, my professor career is on my OnZoom. It'll be on my OnZoom. But I don't teach those every week. I give people a couple of months to sign up for the class. You guys will get, any paying subscriber, and even the free fans on my YouTube are going to get discounts for if you want to take one of my classes. Now, the cold case review investigative journalism class, you're seeing it in microscopic detail. But I teach the general principles, and in that class I've switched. we're going to do the Gary Hinman murder because it's so useful. And you guys, a lot of you have already seen me go over that case, so you probably don't need to pay for that class. Forgery and handwriting identification and forgery class, killer paragraphs class for anybody, any writer, creative nonfiction for any writer. Maybe I'll teach. I haven't taught it for a few years, but I do teach methods of social research for business majors. A lot of military people, that's part of your MBA, methods of social research. And I teach a really good social research class where you do your own. Let's say you're in the marketing department at Apple and you want to do surveys, and like you do it like, and then you write up your results. So like the way I teach you to do that. Or you can take my crash course in writing research papers. Like if you're taking English Composition 2 and you want to get better than that, or you're a serious grad student, I do teach it's probably a shorter class. Because the one I teach at the college, because I teach semiotics, linguistics, and rhetoric. I teach, so some of those classes, I know some of you have already said they might be interested in taking some of those classes. So apart from what I do here, like in those classes, I take off the hat. The hat is for the Stones Unturned podcast. Oh yeah, those, and that wasn't the only one, sticky marks. Apparently, my one of my great grandparents, my direct great, probably an illegal immigrant from Canada, Irish, came through. He showed up in Illinois with a common law French Canadian wife, Catholic. The way the family story went, his mother had been left at the workhouse, the South Dublin workhouse, which had just been, there'd been a big scandal. The former director of the South Dublin workhouse for 30 years, newborn babies were taken upstairs, given a huge dose of laudanum, and put to sleep. Every single one of them. And word got out, and there was a big scandal, and he was sacked and replaced, and she was left on the doorstep like a year later. Like she just barely missed being euthanized at the South Dublin workhouse, apparently, supposedly. And then he was born in the workhouse and raised and trained to be a carpenter and came to America. I still have his, I'll show you, I still have his hammer he brought from Liverpool, where he was trained to be a carpenter and then transported for free to the New World to get rid of them, to get rid of the Irish population. Adam would be interested. Yeah, I teach some good classes. You know, they're not every day. $300 a class. There's a cluster of 4 classes, used to, like for $1,000, and you don't have to pay for the whole thing at once. If you've already paid for 3 classes, your 4th class is $100. And so I may make some shorter versions. I might do a killer paragraph class that's only like 3 weeks long or something, and maybe a little bit less money. But teaching is where I make my money. And I'm a good teacher. See, once I set up the class, once I port my classes into an online format on Zoom, then I don't have to do a new slideshow I don't have to do, you know how many slides go into a slideshow for 1 hour of this show? Do you know how long that takes? But they're getting done and polished, and thanks for sticking with me, and thanks for your support, and thanks for the moral support. It's after 2:30 already. It's getting hot in here. Let me get back to work getting things set up. Get the semester off to a good start. Get the new website really going full-time, permanent. Signing the contract, and see, they'll let me pay a month at a time instead of a year in advance. That helps a lot. So it will be everything we dreamed of and more. I kind of just want to give Carl a chance to respond if he wants to. Has he finally shut up? I keep telling him, and I'm being sincere, Carl, You and Manny both. The best advice I could give you if you were clients of mine in this business is to shut up. Stop trying to backfill, stop trying to explain, stop trying to split hairs, because you're making it much worse. And I think the problem is, it's basically you don't know as much as I do about yourselves and your own families. But whatever the problem is, you've got to shut up. You're making it worse. And wait till I butt something and before you rebut it, because you're not helping yourself at all. You're making yourselves look worse, and you're making your parents look worse all the time. Shut up. I don't mean like threatening you to shut up. I'm saying my advice to you, take a page out of Peter's book. And Carl, you remember when you ghosted yourself back in the 70s? You need to do that again for a while, till at least I'm done. Then respond, or try to respond. I can't wait to see you try to respond. But I think those two guys don't know as much as I do. But who knows? You want to do a gardening show? I can put it on my platform. I have no problem with that. I'm keeping the money. Maybe we'll work out a deal. We'll see. I could do it, but I got a green thumb. All I know is Manny killed my roses and doesn't know the names of simple plants. He doesn't really seem to know anything about gardening. Well, I don't think he is allowed to shut up, Brandy. I think you're absolutely right. But hey, that's just more of that crazy conspiracy theory, shoddy research that Carl keeps griping about. So, Carl, I want you to chew over the shoddy research I've done, and there will be more. Yeah, and Adam, I know what you're thinking. I take a class and I can teach you a lot, and it's for people of all different levels. Everybody gets something out of my class. Expert writers, professors sign up for my classes. Practical advice, and there's very little theory. There's almost no lecturing. You'll download some forms or whatever. You write, and it's a process and techniques and skills you can learn and repeat over and over and over. And I make it fun, but you can use it for a lot. Yeah, if you're taking visual material, I used to teach a special course in dialogue. Maybe I'll do that one again. I'm really good at dialogue. I'm a good writer and a good writing teacher. Becoming a good writing teacher was kind of like the last step of my career. And I'm proud of it. He was on 2 days ago with Neo again. Okay, let's see what he has to say. Let's see if he saw the last episode. I don't mind if Carl can see these episodes. I'm not hiding anything from him. But he's obviously incommunicado as far as I'm concerned. You know, he's broken off. He hasn't, I don't think he unfriended me on Facebook, but he hasn't replied in a while. I don't blame him. And all kidding aside, he might not know a lot of this stuff, and there's a lot more. Kale and cherry tomatoes. You're growing rattlesnake beans? Okay. I'd like to have some content to put on there. It's just a question of next tax year, if your show's making money, I can shoot you some money. Because if they're not live, they can be, listen, Pat, I want you to write this down. Don't try to do a live podcast. If I had it all to do over, but I enjoy it so much, and you guys enjoy it, your enjoyment of it, and then I just feel like I'm this bartender. It's kind of like I'm a bartender again. Yeah, it's hard to say, Sticky Marks. It's hard to say what Carl really remembers and what he really doesn't. It's hard to say. But he's a public figure. He's been made himself a public figure since 1978. Or 77, February of 77. So Yeah. Put one together and we'll see. I'd like to have more content on there. You could do a YouTube channel. It makes a little bit of money, and then the affiliate marketing makes a lot of money. Not a lot yet. I haven't tried very hard. Getting this all set up, is part of my media empire. But like the affiliate, those videos I made of the exercise equipment have more than paid for the equipment. Believe me. I'm thinking about getting one of those little electric scooters because I live in a college town and they're showing up. You got your app. You click on the thing. They have the stand up and they have the sit down ones. I tried the stand up one today and did not fall off of it. I can't ride a skateboard to save my life. But I'm looking at the sit down ones because I could bebop to Walmart, bebop here, bebop there, because I get my electricity's included in my rent, and I could keep it on my closed-in porch and just take it up and down the stairs. They're not that heavy; it's like 60 pounds, but they got like big 16-inch wheels on them. The ones I'm looking at, little electric scooters, and just boogie all over town. It'd just be fun with no oil. I got to keep it in my apartment. Well, and I don't want to buy gas, and I don't want to. Little electric scooters, man, it'll last me for years. I'll tell you what, Pat, go on Zoom. It's a brand new platform. Free to sign up. They take a bite out of your subs, and you can do pay-per-views. Look at On Zoom and think about doing your gardening show on there. It won't cost you much better than YouTube. Much better than YouTube. And gardening would be no problem. This show will not fly on Zoom. They are not interested in anything like this on Zoom. I understand. But my classes will be on there. But see, I can link them to my new. You can actually, when I say link, I don't mean links. I mean, you can either pay for the class on Zoom or you can pay for the class. So like you guys subscribe to my new website, then you get automatic discount when you sign up for other stuff like my classes. And then you can pay, or I could host some on Zoom and host some of them on my new platform. A lot of webinars, but I can still use my new platform as the paid gateway to my on Zoom. That still will work. Much better than what you're watching me on now. You got an eZip 1000? You can stand up and sit down. The one I'm looking at is, let me look at that. Because the one I was looking at on Amazon, now for one that can haul my kind of weight around and I could ride it to work and back on a nice day. They are almost finished a bike path all the way, because I can ride the first mile, it's less than a mile, cutting through parks and side streets, and then cross one big street and get on the path and take it all the way to one of the colleges, my closest job, the one that's close to here, 7 miles away, and come back in nice weather. I think that would just be fun. I miss riding motorcycles and shooting machine guns. And eZip 1000, let me take a look at that. Are they on Amazon? But the other one I'm looking at also, the seat's removable and the handlebars fold down so you can put it in your car. I could take it to a state park somewhere and then tool around. I think that would be fun. eZip 1000 electric scooter go-karts. Go-Karts USA. 450 models. They got all kinds of stuff. eZip 1000. 509? How much? I'm afraid to buy one that cheap. I'm a 240-pound tight end. I was surprised how easy it was to ride. VO had brought scooters to this college town. If I'm out walking and then I suddenly need to go to the bathroom like old men do, or if I they're all over, I see them all over the place, I get overheated, I can hop on a scooter and come home. my car breaks down, there's an AutoZone. I can walk there. It's only a mile away, but it'd be nice. It's $1 to turn them on and 31 cents a minute after that. That's a $5 ride home. You don't have to wait for the Uber to show up. And I've Ubered. I didn't Uber this summer. I've been too busy. I shouldn't have told people that. The hitman is going to... Don't send the hitman to get me on the Uber. Out of stock, discontinued. The one I'm looking at is a little bit heavier duty. Yeah, they're out of stock right now with gas prices the way they are. And I'll tell you what, I think I just get one just for the fun of it. If not, it would be handy to have, and I think it would just be fun because I'm too old to be riding around on. But it was so easy to ride, and these are the I'm going to go out after the show and look for, because kids ride them all the time, and of course, there's college kids zipping by on them all the time. Yeah, they were, and they've got one, they run about 1,100 with the basket and the extra big battery. It's supposed to be a 30-mile battery, which would be plenty big for me. I would get a Tesla Cybertruck because you can get one with a solar cell. I don't think it would be quite enough. Or like this apartment complex, the next time they roof this place, I know they're going to put up solar cells, and then they might put in charging stations for us. We get a lot for our rent money here, and it's an old building, so it's quiet. You know, it's a quiet building, and we got free fiber optic Wi-Fi, which has been super stable. I moved over here, 3 years ago because they were going to put it in, and it took them 2 years to get it done. So it's been a year. It's worked great. Unless we have a major power outage, it works great. I bought a backup power supply. I'm getting more soundproofing. But it's still small enough I can still fold it up and bring it upstairs, which would be nice. And especially with the big, because a bicycle's too big. It's not that much. It's not that much heavier than a good sturdy mountain bike, and really a good sturdy mountain bike costs $1,000. You can get bicycles like mopeds that have electric motors on them. I think I just want to get a scooter. They have roll-up solar panels you can carry with you and charge up your scooter. They talked about your car. You know, they can put the body of the whole car will be a solar cell. If I was dumb enough to buy a house, your next driveway, get the ones that are solar cells. And then not only, you don't have to put the solar cells on your roof. If you got room for a parking area and driveway in front of your house and your sidewalks, you can get those done as those glass solar cells. And then, of course, they store electricity, and then they melt the ice. Flip them on, and they'll melt the ice off your... Thank you, Morgana. Thank you so much. Or motorhomes. You can get motorhomes with solar cell. You know, that would be... See, I can't... If this works, and teaching classes online, I could, if I ever moved out of here for whatever reason, just get a motorhome. And I would. And then just get a little electric car, or get one of a little bit bigger electric buggy and take it to Walmart or whatever. Because these... Anyway, that's enough of that. Thanks you guys very much. Be safe, be well. Thank you one more time for your patience. By Labor Day. So get set up, me practice live streaming, learn how everything works. Because this is at least jumping around from one YouTube to another. You guys know how the chat works. Figure out how it works. roll it out, maybe do the first episode in 2 weeks, and maybe a really good one for like Labor Day or something, and then just do, I think most episodes will just be on the new platform. That's just how it's going to be. And I'll use my old YouTube for marketing purposes and for affiliate marketing and stuff like that. So thank you all very much. I just enjoyed doing the show so much. And people who are smart enough and interested enough, not that many people are that interested in Son of Sam to sit through this, but you guys, put that wherever you want it. Be safe, be well, have a great week. I will keep you updated. You'll get promo codes when the time comes. Don't pay any more subscriptions for now. No more Patreon, no more of the new website. You will get, don't worry, you're going to get promo codes. And then other people, even the people who haven't subscribed yet, they're waiting for me to get my shit together. And a lot of people are waiting for this mobile experience, and I understand that. And it's just, they were just amazing. So last minute miracle, I found a better company. Thank you all so much. Keep watching the skis. If I can find the closing theme, I'll play it. You guys don't care. There's only 16 people.
Big and
Is that it? That's the closing theme of the... There we go. I'm Professor Thomas Henry Horan, asking you to please stay plugged in to the Stones Unturned podcast.
He reads everything.
Yeah, I read everything. I deserve... I cut myself a little bit of slack. Hi, Goose. Did I say hi to everybody? Okay, I'll see you guys real soon. Give Sweet Pea a kiss from me.